From sunny St Leonard's on the south coast of the UK, this is the Keto Woman Podcast, brought to you by me, Daisy Brackenhall. Hello Keto Lovelies, and welcome to episode number 227, where I am back with Mark Davidson for the second part of his two-part episodes. Do go back and listen to the first episode if you haven't already, where you can find out more about Mark and his story. Very interesting journey he's had combating issues with depression, weight and gluten intolerance. He mentioned towards the end of last week's episode how he started to think about and wanting to pay it forward. And so this week we talk about the group that he runs called Real Food Your Way and the impact that that has had obviously on the people he's been helping, but also on him, because he kind of started his journey as quite a solo affair and didn't get so involved like a lot of us do in things like Facebook groups or whatever kind of community you find yourself in. But he's come to see the great benefit these communities can have. So this is what we're talking about. And I'm a very firm believer in that too. Finding some kind of community, whatever it is, that is there to support you, but also for you to be able to share your experience. So we are going to talk about that. A quick roundup from me. If you can hear a droning in the background, it's because I think it's the next door upstairs neighbour, and I think they're sanding their floors. So it's pretty noisy, but this is the problem with flat living and neighbours. You can't really escape the noise sometimes, but hopefully this mic is close enough to my mouth that you won't hear it. But if you do, that's what it is. So apologies for that. What else has been happening this week? Well, I spent a very enjoyable hour or two recording with Megan Pfeffer this morning. We were scheduled to record back on Monday, but we got our timing mixed up. It was that annoying time when the clocks change and it just went all a bit wrong. And I was desperate to get down to the beach because I had a feeling it was going to be the last lovely day for a while. And so we put it off until this morning. And what a difference. So this was Monday and it was a beautiful day, much like the days I was telling you about this time last week. Lovely and warm and sunny, perfect sea. This morning we had a bit of a snow blizzard. And actually, I would have quite enjoyed going and swimming in that, but it's gone from those big fat flakes to, I'm not quite sure what you'd call it. Is it snow? But it's not those typical snowflakes, but it's not really hail, which is balls of ice. It's sort of little balls of snow, somewhere in between. Snail, that's what it is. It's been snailing and very cold, bitter wind. Just got back from taking the dogs out and it was reasonable when we went out, although this very cold wind, but on the way back it was snailing quite heavily and they were not very impressed. So they're all curled up, trying to get warm and have a nice sleep now. But nothing else to report. It's just been a bit of a crowded house week. 4 seasons in one day, if you don't know the reference. If you were into 80s, 90s, more 90s, I guess, music, they were one of my favourite bands. So when you get those mixed, not untypical, I have to say, British days, it always makes me think of that Crowded House track. So before we get onto the episode, I do just want to tell you about something that hopefully you might be interested in helping out with and supporting. I'm sure most of you have heard by now the very, very sad news of Sarah Hallberg's passing. And I'd probably also hazard a guess that there aren't many of you that haven't been touched by her, haven't benefited from her TED Talk, one or more of her presentations. She really did have and will continue to have a very far-reaching and beneficial effect on people. I feel very fortunate to have seen her present at Low Carb Denver a few years ago. And I have to say, I walked away from that conference feeling really buoyed by the fact that the speakers I found most interesting, most engaging were not entirely, but predominantly were some of the women that were presenting. And Sarah Hallberg was definitely one of those. She was one of those people when she was on stage. There's no messing about on your phone. Completely captivating and engaging. You didn't want to take your eyes or ears off her. So I feel very lucky to have been in the same room watching her present. Sadly, I didn't get to meet her, but I know some of you out there have. Like I say, there aren't many people who haven't watched a presentation by her and found it so beneficial. And what I wanted to tell you about was a fantastic way to be able to repay that benefit. And that is a GoFundMe account that's been set up by her friends and family that's going to raise money to continue with the work she was doing to help reverse type 2 diabetes. So I will put a link in the show notes to make it nice and easy for you. You can also find it in places like on Nina Teicholz's Facebook page. That's how I came across it. No pressure, of course, but it's one of those things that quite often you're really pleased when somebody's told you of a way that you can pay it back, pay it forward a bit. So the link's there if you would like to make use of it. But what a very sad time, and what a low-carb keto legend she was, will continue to be in this work that's being done in her name. So back now to this week's episode and the second part of my chat with Mark Davidson. I hope you enjoy it. So we're back with the second part, Mark. Thank you for joining me back here on Keto Woman Podcast. I'm not going to ask how you're doing today because I've already done that, but we are a week later. So still going strong. But I mentioned in the first episode that I first heard about you on Dan's podcast. And he was talking about a group that, well, you can tell me all about it, but that you were involved in, and a sort of a big group experiment that you reported back to Dan on his podcast with an episode that we will put in the show notes so people can go and listen to that, about the progress that this group had made. But I'll let you tell your own story. You hinted, I interrupted you before you went down that track, but you mentioned that you were at that point where you wanted to start giving back. And actually something that I wanted to ask you before you start telling that story is, had you found some communities that you could join and get support from in your journey, or was it all you talked about, you know, your own investigations on YouTube and things? That sounds like quite a solo affair and you figured things out for yourself, but did you find some group support for you?
I did, but not initially, and to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure I ever went looking for it in the early days. It didn't really occur to me that it might be a thing. Subsequently, I found a lot, and there were lots of groups out there that, there's lots of groups on Facebook, and they cater for a variety of different ways of approaching things, and they have their own styles and their own preferences, and hopefully people would find one that suits what they want to do. But, in the early days, I very much did this on my own. And it's kind of like a trait of mine to be a bit sort of focused in on these kinds of things. And it was only, funnily enough, it was only when I was listening to podcasts and I started listening to you and I started listening to Dan. And this is where we go full circle, right? So Back in August 2020, I was listening to Dan's podcast, and Dan had a chap on called Aranda Whitram Singer, and he was talking about a group that he was starting called Real Food Your Way. I thought this would be useful for my partner. My partner had some issues of her own, and ironically, because I was too close to her, it was actually quite hard for me to help her.
It makes complete sense, yeah.
And so actually what I thought was, well, maybe if I can get her to get involved with a group like this, then, that might help her. So what I did was I listened to Dan's podcast. I got Amanda's details. I pinged him a message and say, hey, look, can I have a chat with you? Because I want to talk to you, but it's not about me. And so we got chatting, and I said, look, I've done my journey. I've been through that pathway. I know what it's like. But I've got somebody else who I think would benefit from being part of a group where, actually there are people, there's a commonality of theme to everything. There's a commonality to people's experiences. And I think she'd really benefit from it. Oh, and by the way, I've been there. I've got the T-shirt, I've been through all the experiences. So if you need a hand, I'm happy to help. And the rest, as they say, is kind of history. So we were involved for about the next just over a year, actually, that Aranda was running the group. And during the course of that, he's a PhD ambassador, and he was asked to go and get involved with a program they're running called the TLC program, which is involved with doing work on GP surgeries. And so he had a bit of a conflict with time in terms of getting access to, having enough time to do that and run this group. And so me being me, I said, okay, mate, look, we've still got people in the group. We've still got people actively involved in the group. How about I just take it over and start running it? And, and by that time, we kind of got down to a relatively small group of people all of whom had sort of fairly positive experiences. And I'll go on to talk about those experiences in a moment. And so basically I took it on. We've had a couple of people join who have now started on their own journey. At the moment, I'm still in a position instantly where we could probably take another one or two people into the group if people were interested. We'll get onto that maybe a little bit later. But if we talk back through the experiences that we've had with the group right from the get-go, so we've had two people in the group who were type 2 diabetic who are no longer type 2 diabetic. So they're in full remission.
Fantastic.
They're actually the only, although Aranda originally started the group with the idea of getting people who are type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic into remission, we've only ever had a couple of people in the group that were type 2 diabetic, and therefore our success rate is 100%. Mm-hmm. If the food industry can fiddle the figures and the numbers, and the pharmaceutical companies can fiddle the figures and the numbers, I can do it too, right? We've now got, and those people have stuck with the group. That's the key thing, all right? So where we ended up when Aranda had to stop and I took it over was we actually had a core group of people who were very used to coming together once every week or every other week and just sharing, what they were up to and what they were doing and how they felt about things. And we've got a little WhatsApp group where people can just sort of ping messages about, and it is like a little bit like an extended family.
And you meet on Zoom, is that right?
Yeah, we do online meetings, like I said, every week, or it was every other week at the moment. And so we went through a process of getting those people into, educating them about low carb eating, educating them about eating real food. And the whole emphasis of the group has always been real food. We're not trying to get people into ketosis. If they want to do that, they can. That's their choice. That's up to them. Okay. But in reality, what we want to do is we want to help people, basically just strip out the carbohydrates, the refined carbohydrates, the ultra processed foods, the seed oils, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a period of education that we went through with them. And then it was basically a period of actually just helping people to stick with it and stay with it. And sort of, when people had little issues or they were faced with a dilemma, help, I'm surrounded by cake, that kind of thing. That's what we were there to do. We were there to support people. So we got to the point where Aranda moved on to TLC. And what I actually had was I had a group of people who'd got all the experience. They'd all been through their own journey and they'd all come out the other side in some way, shape or form. Some of them, were still living with sort of like bits of difficulty, but they had all got experience of going through what that meant. And I said to them, well, look, what can we do with this group now? How can we now take what we've learned over the course of the last year and use it for other people? So that's when me and some of the folks from the group went on to Dan's podcast and basically said, look, this is our experience over the last year. We've had people lose weight. We've had people put type 2 diabetes into remission. We've had people with some fairly extreme eating habits get those eating habits under control because they weren't being stimulated by, dopamine and sort of like the mesolimbic pathway and all that kind of stuff. What can we do now to further it? And so we just opened up invitations again. Like I said, we had a couple of people join, and we do have room for a couple more, in terms of being able to help people through that journey of just working out for yourself what works and what doesn't. And the whole point of the group is that we're not there to do anything other than be a support network. I can teach you how it works, right? I can teach you the science. I can teach you the mechanics of it. We can talk about other people's real life experiences though. And ultimately that's what tends to resonate with people, hearing somebody else go, oh yeah, I have that. Oh yeah, I've had that problem. I've had that experience. That's the thing that's really powerful. That's the thing that tends to make people realize actually that, do you know what? This isn't like going out and buying Slim Fast or Light of Life or anything like that. This is about other people's experiences being relevant to you, and that actually you are not alone, and it doesn't matter how hard you find it, how low you get, how difficult it becomes. There will always be somebody that you can send a message to. There'll always be a group of people who you can send a message to, and you won't just get one message back. You'll get 3 or 4 or 5. And some of those messages will be, look, I felt the same. You've just got to kind of try and get your way through it. Or here's how I coped with that. Here's how I coped with that situation. And getting people to a point where they're, and this is kind of like the tightness of the group. So like I said, it is a little bit like an extended family. I don't want it to grow too big. What I'd rather do is I'd rather split it into smaller groups, because actually I think what we found is a formula that works. So the formula is you have 2 or 3 people who've got experience, and then you add 2 or 3 people who are new, and then gradually there's like the knowledge transfer over a course of some months, and then it runs along for a period of time, and then actually everyone can then do what they choose to do. And we've had people join the group and then leave, and we've had people join the group and get great benefit from it and leave. That's the nature of these things. It's not like we charge for it, because we don't. People can just come along and they can just meet and they can be part of the process, and they can get out of it what they want to get out of it. And for some people, some of the people who've been in the group and then left, they got out of it what they wanted. They got out of it what they needed, and they left with a sense of their own understanding of how they could help themselves. And that's really what it's about. It's about teaching people to help themselves. It's about teaching people that there shouldn't be any fear in going out into the world and living the way you want to live, eating the food that you want to eat, eating the food that you know is better for you. We have somebody in the group at the moment they're kind of leaning towards sort of being a bit more carnivorous. We've got another person who's likes to eat sort of more vegetable stuff. We've got a couple of people who sit in the middle. We've got one person, again, I'm not naming names here, so and they're quite comfortable, incidentally, for me to talk at this level. I've had conversations with them. They're all okay with it. We've had somebody who's a little bit almost hooked on measuring. So hooked on, I'm going to weigh myself, and I haven't lost any weight today, so I better go and fast tomorrow. And actually, there's a little bit of self-destruction in that kind of behavior, and you have to be really, really careful with it. And so what we did with him was we said, look, let's do a little experiment. Don't weigh yourself for 2 weeks. Just don't weigh yourself for 2 weeks, and let's see what happens. And guess what? It was a better thing than weighing himself every day, because he wasn't triggering the destructive behavior. He stopped thinking about it. Yeah. And it's being able to make those suggestions to people and getting them to try things and get them to have those experiments, to make those things real for themselves, but to do it in a way where, look, we're in a position where everyone in the group has been there. We've all stuffed ourselves stupid. We've all made ourselves feel ill. We've all had issues around health or weight or both, so there is nothing that you can say to us which is going to be a surprise. We've had people in the group, we've got people in the group now who've had issues with, for example, binge eating in secret. Yeah. Going and buying enough food to constitute a dinner and sitting in their car and eating it, and then going home and eating their dinner. Okay. This is the thing, right? That for some people, that's real life. For some people, that is how they are, and they can't find a way to break out of that pattern. And so maybe for just a few people, we can help them break out of that pattern. And then maybe for a smaller subset of those people, we can empower them enough and give them enough confidence in themselves that actually they can go and start to spread that message out to other people. One of the guys who's now a long-standing member of the group, he's actually gone off and got himself properly nutritionally trained. And he's actually written a food tracking book that you can buy on Amazon.
Fabulous.
And he would never have done that. He would never have done that if he hadn't got involved in what we were doing. That's what I love about this, is we don't set out to change people's lives. That's not the goal. The goal is just to help people learn that they can be different, and to give people the confidence to be different, the confidence to say, I don't have to eat this. I don't have to eat the bag of crisps. I don't have to order the pizza. Okay, I can make a different choice. I can be a different person. And it works. It works. You know, and like I said, that's why I'm very, very keen to keep it relatively small, because I think the closeness of it is an important factor.
Part of it, yeah, absolutely.
It is part of it. You know, we're close, but we're not close in a cliquey kind of way. We're very, very open and very welcoming. You know, we had 2 people join the group just after Christmas, and now they're just like part of the family. You know, they're literally like, it's like they've always been there. Okay. And one of them, her partner is now doing it alongside her. And he's seeing the benefits for himself as well, because he's seen it happen with her. And that's how it spreads, right? That's how we get that message out there. We change one person at a time, but that person tells someone, and that person tells someone, and then somebody else changes, and then it spreads out from there.
Well, it brings to mind an episode of, I don't know if you've listened to Fern Cotton's podcast, Happy Place. It's a really nice podcast, actually, but she was talking to Dr. Pippa Grange, who's a psychologist, and it just brings to mind something they were saying about groups, and about the general gist of the podcast was fear, and how most of us are fear driven in different ways. But they were talking about interaction in groups, and one of the fears of going into groups of fitting in, and it just came to mind with what you were saying about the nature of your group and the fact of it being a judgment-free zone, a fact of having this variety of experience with people at different parts in their journey, which I think is important. I can remember there was a criticism held at my Facebook group where people were saying, you know, oh, it's not a good place for newbies because it's all people who've been, you know, they're hardened ketoers and they've been going for a while. Well, no, it's the perfect place to have a mix. You want that mix. You don't want just newbies together. You don't want just the oldies together. You want everyone to mix, because and this is what made me think of what Dr. Grange was talking about. It's an exchange.
It is.
She says you get rid of this fear of a kind of power play, this fear of value. What have I got to offer? Am I going to fit in? It's all about exchange. And when you were saying about this person who had the secret binge eating, and what they probably wouldn't have appreciated is this exchange. They potentially would have, you know, this is a deep, dark secret that they're ashamed of, and they would have maybe appreciated and thought about the value that they could get from the advice and support that was offered. But I think the part that they often miss is the exchange part, is the value that their experience has to offer, not only from sharing that experience with the other people who will now become more familiar with it, but going on to potentially helping people who are in the same boat as them. I think that you get so locked into your own problems and shame and guilt and hiding it away, and you forget the value that you have to offer for such a group as yours. It's not all about you fitting in and people helping you, but you know, there's so much that you have to give as well.
Absolutely. And actually what that's done is that's reminded me of the events around that particular story being revealed. So in this particular case, this person, they kind of revealed that this was their way of living previously. And they effectively had that almost like that confessional moment, which was, oh yeah, I used to do this really terrible thing, and I used to buy chocolate and eat it, and secretly in my car and all the rest of it. It was a big moment for them, I think, in terms of actually feeling confident enough in themselves to actually come out and say it, and then instantly somebody else in the group said, yep, I've done that. And that's the group. That for me summarizes the group so perfectly. We have to be honest. The group lives on its honesty. It lives on that transparency and that lack of fear around sharing. Because when you're in that group and there's like just a small number of us, getting together, okay, it is a completely safe space. I've personally shared things in that group that I wouldn't have thought about sharing previously. I've only really got the confidence to come on to podcasts and talk quite openly about where I've been with a lot of this stuff because I've been in that group, because it's made it easier for me to understand the power of just getting that message out there and how it can affect, and again, like I said, you only have to change one person a little bit. Okay. And you've done something good. You've done something constructive. You've done something positive. And you've countered some of that negativity that's there in the world and the messaging around food and how we should be and what sort of people we should be and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think that for me, that kind of sums the group up perfectly. Everyone, like I said, everyone fears that their experience is unique. And the simple truth is you are not alone. Okay. You may not have an identical set of experiences to other people, but you will have felt the same things. You will have felt the same emotions. You will have felt the same worries, the same concerns, the same doubts, the same feelings of guilt, the same feelings of not liking yourself very much. I've said to you previously, I looked at a picture of myself and I was horrified. And that image is burned into my mind. Okay. And that will never go. But I recognize it for what it is. It's that pivotal moment, and I recognize the power that I got from that. Everyone is the same. Everyone has had those moments. Everyone has had those experiences with food. Everyone has had those experiences with, feeling like they've let themselves down. They've been disappointed or in themselves or whatever. And the reality of it is, actually, do you know what? Ultimately, you're a product of the environment you're in. If you're in an environment which tells you that you can eat this stuff, you're in an environment which peddles this stuff to you relentlessly, day in, day out, 24 hours a day. You're in an environment where the sorts of foods that when I was a child, were treat foods that you got once a week are now available to you instantly every day. It's really, really hard to not just fall into the trap. I don't know if you've ever come across a guy called Alan Carr.
Yeah.
Not the comedian.
Oh, not the comedian. That's who I was thinking of.
No. Alan Carr is famous for writing a book about stopping smoking.
Okay.
And about a good few years ago, I used to be a smoker. And when I was in my late 20s, I stopped smoking using this Alan Carr method. It's a book, and it's a book that's written in a particular style and a particular language. And they have sort of like sessions that you can go to in various clinics that they run around the country. But one of the things that he talks about in the book is he talks about this metaphor of a pitcher plant. So a pitcher plant, for those that don't know it, is a carnivorous plant. It eats insects. And it's basically a long, tall plant. And you'll probably have to go and Google a picture of it. But basically, it's like a long, tall plant that's almost like a vase.
What a picture.
And yeah, like a picture. Yeah. Okay. The clue is in the name, to be fair. And what it does is it's kind of, it has a nectar at the bottom of the plant, which flies and other insects find very, very attractive. They can smell it and they land on the outside of the plant. And there's a little trace of the nectar on the edge of the plant. And it gradually sort of teases them further in and further in. And as they're getting further into the plant, the structure of the plant changes and there's more nectar and it's more sticky. And eventually they get to a point where they're trapped and they kind of fall down and they're suddenly surrounded by all the other insects that have been trapped as well. And what he says is that anyone who starts smoking is kind of somewhere on that slope. Okay. They might be right on the edge. They might be slipping down. Okay. That everyone is on that slope. And I think that metaphor applies equally well to things like, in particular, sugar and refined carbohydrates. Okay. I think everyone is on that slope somewhere, and some people have just slipped further in. Okay. That's not their fault. That is absolutely not their fault, because that's what those things are designed to do. You know, you're in a world where you've got companies whose job it is to sell you more products. So funnily enough, what they've done is they've designed products that are designed to make you buy more. You can't help that. That's not because you are, as an individual, it's not because you're weak. It's not because you lack capacity. It's not because you can't control yourself, but you are surrounded by things that are designed to fool you. And they're designed to fool you at a very, very subliminal, almost chemical level in how your body reacts to what you're given. Okay. And then on top of that, the media, the government, etc., tell you that this is normal. They tell you that this is the behaviors you should have. You should be buying snack foods and little boxes of this and little packets of that.
But you should be able to control it.
But you can't, okay, because you're designed to not control it.
But that's what you're told, you know, that if
exactly,
you're
that's what you're
good
told.
person, you know, that you can control it. You can just eat less and move more. You can calorie count. You can do this and you can do that. And you'll be fine. You'll be healthy. It's your fault. Yeah,
exactly. Of course it is. And that's the problem. And that's the tension that gets set up in people's minds. You know, it must be their fault. Well, no, it's not actually, because you're eating stuff that's designed to make you want to eat more. Okay, well, if it's not my fault, then whose is it? Well, actually, it's their fault. But what you've got to do is you have to take responsibility for dealing with the consequences for you. And if we can get people just to recognize that, and actually it is about just taking responsibility, it is about taking ownership, it is about recognizing the things that trigger you and responding appropriately to those things, then you get some control back.
And for
you only need a little bit.
That's the thing. That's where the variability, isn't it? Because yes, this is the environment that's there. And okay, you know, some places, different countries have different environments, and you know, you can argue that. But basically, most of the people who are listening to this have a similar environment, but different people react to that environment in different ways, and some people are more susceptible, more vulnerable than others. And again, like you were saying, that's not a weakness and a choice on your part, but it is a choice on your part as to what you do about it. And it's not about placing blame, and it's not about trying to figure out who's at fault. It's just appreciating, well, this is how I react to the environment that I'm in. You know, the scales have fallen away now. I can see how it's set up to just trip me up all the time. I'm more vulnerable than whoever, friend X or sister Y or whoever it is. I accept that. My personal responsibility is this is the level that I have to attack at. And these are the things that I have to do to get control of my own health again.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we focus on quite heavily in the group is getting people to understand why they want to do these things, why they want to change their behaviors. And the answer to that is never, I want to lose weight. That's a benefit. It's an outcome of what we're going to do. Okay. But it cannot be your only reason. And the reason it cannot be your only reason is that what do you do then when you've lost the weight? Because actually, if all you wanted to do is lose weight, then when you've lost the weight, you will have no motivation to keep those behaviors, and things will inevitably unravel. And this is why a lot of diets fail. You know, it's a very simple thing, but it's very true. You know, people go onto a diet plan because they want to lose weight. Okay. Well, when you've lost the weight, what are you going to do? Oh, well, yeah, I haven't really thought about that.
But again, it's the system, it's the environment. You know, they are set up that way. They want you to quote unquote fail because it's repeat business. That is the business plan. So that's another thing to appreciate, that diet culture, hard baked into that, is that it's temporary, is that it's going to have that never ending cycle of you get the hit of it working, and then you get the crash and burn of it not working anymore, so you've got to go on and find a different one. Or they come up with, I was listening to Jason Fung and Megan and Nadia, one of the podcasts that I was editing episode. I think it's out this week, and he was just talking about that environment, and they were talking about, this is why Weight Watchers come up with different plans every new year. There's a different scheme for their point system or whatever it is, because they need that constant change and refreshing and something new for diets, because it is always something new. There's always this turnover.
Absolutely.
So again, it's the environment that you're in. It's not you.
No, absolutely not. It is definitely just people, unfortunately will be, for want of a better word, misdirected by this stuff. They do get pulled in, almost seduced, if you like, by the and the other thing is the quick results. Oh yeah, you can do this, you can do that. It's really quick. It's 21 days or 14 days of this and whatever. And you will not get to a point after 21 days. You might lose some weight, okay? You might, absolutely you might, and you might feel great about yourself. But what happens on day 22? What happens on day 42? What happens in month 6? Are you still doing that same thing you were doing for those 21 days? Probably not. And that's where these things will always trip up. And that's why people bounce around. You get these people who are serial dieters. They do everything going because they're forever chasing the wrong thing. They're chasing, I want to lose weight. And in reality, do you know what? Actually, what you want to do is you want to get your body into a place where it loses weight by itself and you don't have to think about it. Okay? So what you want is you want your body in a place where actually it's processing food correctly. It's processing, the mechanics of your body are working the way they're designed to work, the way nature intended them to work. They're not running on overdrive all the time. And it's by doing that two things will happen. Firstly, you will feel better, and you will. And secondly, if your body needs to lose weight, then it will. And it will lose that weight at a pace that is correct for you and correct for your physicality, whatever that is. And when you get to a point where your body has lost enough weight, it will naturally start to ease off, and it will naturally start stopping the process of losing weight, and it will naturally get you to an equilibrium. And that's the important thing. That's the balance thing. This is one of the things that, again, it's useful to get people to understand, which is about the fact that eating processed food, ultra processed food, eating refined carbohydrates destroys that equilibrium. And your body's forever fighting to catch up. And again, all we do in the group, to bring it back onto the group, all we ever do in the group is we just help people just to, reinforce those thoughts, reinforce those behaviors, reinforce the things that you want to do. Because actually, guess what? You came on the group and you opened up and you shared with us your real reasons for doing it. I shared with you in the last session, a little bit about why I chose to do it. I chose to do it because I didn't want to see the things that were happening to my parents happen to me. I've got a son and a stepson that I love dearly, and I don't want to be struggling with my own health in 10 years' time. In 10 years' time, my son will be 32 and hopefully he'll be married and he'll have kids of his own. And I want to be an active grandparent. I don't want to be somebody who's, struggling to get out of a chair. And that's my why. That's my reason for doing it, okay, is because I don't want to suffer the fate of people that I've seen suffer the fate that came before me. And I want to be there in some way, shape or form for the generations in front of me. And, I'm not going to live forever, but whilst I'm here, I want to be the best person I can be in terms of my health and my fitness and my abilities. Those are the things that people have to be able to open up about. And those are the things that people have to be honest about. If you can get to that point, if you're comfortable with getting to that point, not everyone is, but if you can get comfortable to that point and we can get people to focus on their why, then the change comes, the change will happen because you're thinking about the real reasons why you're doing it. You're not seduced by this short-termism of, I need to lose some weight. I need to lose some weight for Christmas. Okay, if you need to lose some weight for Christmas, we're not going to be able to help you. if you want to lose some weight because actually you know you've got long-term health problems, you've got type 2 diabetes, you've got fatty liver disease, you've been warned about blood circulation in your limbs, yes, absolutely we can help you because you have a why beyond the weight, okay? And we can do stuff with that. And that's such a key thing. That's such a key thing for that group. And that's why, like I said, it's like us. It's like an extended family. We all know exactly why we're there. And we all have that commitment to each other, to support each other, to see ourselves through to, not falling back into the traps of behaviours that would stop us from being able to meet those longer term goals.
I think it's critical to sustainability is really digging into that why, like you say, and baking it into your identity, because then once you've done that, if you can manage to do that, it then takes most of the struggle element out. It takes most of the decisions out. It makes life easier. Yeah, I struggled for decades, wanted to be an early morning person. And I've spoken, when I started this podcast, and for probably at least half the time I've been doing this podcast, I mentioned it many times. It was something that I really wanted to do. I could see the logic when I was gardening in France. It was so hot in the afternoons, and because I ended up getting up late, I was ending up streaming out there in the full sun and getting too hot, and it was dreadful. And of course it has the roll-on effect of going to bed late at night, and it has impact on my sleep quality and all of that. I could see all the logical reasons for getting up early. Could I make myself do it? No, I couldn't. And then something just clicked at one point. I think it was something to do with some of the podcasts I've been recording with Terry. I don't know what it was, but something clicked in my mind. And I just became a morning person almost overnight. And I just started getting up early, and I have become an early morning person. I do not have, in fact, I actually unplugged my alarm clock because it makes a funny buzzy noise, but it's rare, unless I have a very important something early that I absolutely have to be awake for. I never set it. I naturally wake up early. And I get up and I go, everyone knows I get up and go to the beach now, but I do these things early in the morning. I am an early morning person now, and that's just who I am now. It's part of my identity. Yeah. And so it's that struggle that I could just never get myself to do it. It was always a struggle. Well, it's just none of that is there anymore. It's just what I do. It's who I am. So that's what's key, isn't it? If you can find that something that really tap into that why. And I have to say, when it comes to what I eat, I'm part way there, but I'm not all the way there yet. It's still a process for me to really find that. But I know, because I've seen it happen with the early morning thing, once that does click, once that falls into place, you've struck gold.
Absolutely. And, I think even now I stop and I reflect on things and on the journey that I've been through, and the fact that actually now, for me, it's as much about helping other people as it is about what I've done for myself. I've always been a great believer in giving something back. If you have a positive experience, you try and, it's always good to try and move that on in some way so that somebody else can get some benefit from it. Where I stop and I think about, well, do you know what? 10 years ago, I was like this. 10 years ago, I was like that. And I reflect on that, and I think, and actually, I know for myself, I understand exactly why I made the changes that I made. Everything else from then has been upside. Everything. The fact that I've been able to sort it out for myself. The fact that I've been able to help other people, and, helping people to get themselves into remission from various different health conditions, not just type 2 diabetes, but other ones as well. Sometimes I almost stop and think to myself, do you know what? The fact that I've even been able to play a little part in somebody being able to do something like that is just phenomenal. If you'd said to me 10 years ago, the end of this journey for you, or the next stage of this journey for you will be getting knowledge that you could then pass on to somebody else, and actually it makes a material difference to the quality of their life, and probably makes a material difference to the amount of time that they're going to be alive. I'd have just laughed. I'd have gone, no, that's just not me. That's not who I am. Actually, guess what? It turns out it is who I am. But I had to go through that period of time in my life to actually work it out. And I had to go through that period of time in my life to really understand why I needed to get to that place. And, what's happened to me since then has been, like I said, it's been sort of, for me, it's just been completely transformational. It really has. And the fact that I've been able to do it and help even a few people in very small ways or big ways, depending on your point of view, has been it's been a privilege in many respects, I think. Like I said, I've always taken the view that you give something back. I mean, I know that I will in some ways always be giving something back into this community. I don't know what it'll be. I don't know what it'll be in a couple of years' time or 5 years' time or 10 years' time. But I'll always be bringing something back in, because I think that's what keeps it strong. That's what keeps it alive. I think there's a lot of good. Like I said, there's an increasing amount of noise from people who are sort of jumping on the marketing bandwagon, but there's a positive side to the marketing bandwagon, which is that actually it must mean that people are paying attention. And we've just got to make sure that the message doesn't get diluted.
I agree.
In amongst the flood of bars and cakes and what was the thing I saw the other day? There was a keto protein shake that actually had maltodextrin in it. There you go.
Oh, really? Great.
Yep. It was 11 grams of net carbs in 100 millilitres. And so they probably went, well, that's low carb. We can call it keto. But they didn't think about what they were making it out of.
No, exactly.
Yeah, it's a killer, isn't it? I mean, literally.
Let's not talk about shakes, because we'll get on to Michael Mosley's fast, and I will get very, very ranty. I might even record an episode just having a rant about that, because it annoys me so much. But so I won't go down that track.
Yeah.
Not today. But with the groups, I mean, for me, I think the key to groups, and I think the value that they have that they really do you need them as part of your journey, even if it's like you went quite a time without getting involved in groups, but at some point you need them. I think it's something that you need for sustainability, but it's that, for me, the power of groups is the power of shared experience.
Yes.
Is the power of exchange, as Dr. Grange talks about. And it's finding a group that is a safe place for that exchange, where you feel valued and you feel safe enough to be able to share, to be able to give of yourself and have that exchange. And, you have to find the group that's right for you to do that. And I think that's what's so fantastic now with technology is the fact that there will always be something out there. There will be a group for you to find on the platform that you like, be it Facebook, be it Zoom, be it WhatsApp, be it whatever it is. There is a community there for you. But I think to succeed, to really make it sustainable, I think being part of a community in some form is key to that.
It is completely key to that. And it's not only having somewhere to go, it's not only about having a safety net, it's also about sort of reminding yourself, like I said, that other people have had the same experiences as you. You are not alone. We've all done those things at some point in the past. We've all had those thoughts. We've all had those feelings. We've all had those fears. We've all had that worry that we'll never get off that treadmill. And being part of a group, whether it's a Facebook group or an interactive group of some sort, just somewhere where you can go and just get that reassurance that actually, it's not just you. It is other people. And, you are, as we said earlier, you are not to blame for the environment that surrounds you. You are not to blame for being led astray by the messaging, because the messaging is confused and it's contradictory. Once you understand how the science works, the messaging is very contradictory. And, you don't need to know the science. People don't have to learn complicated things to do this and to eat this way. They just have to eat the real food, and they have to learn to just recognize what real food is not. I look at what kids eat today and it terrifies me. It really terrifies me, when you think about what they're eating today. And then I look at what I used to eat when I was their age, and I grew up on home cooked meals and, roast dinner every Sunday and all that classic stuff, right?
Same.
And, I look at what's happening now and, how food has stopped being anything other than, it's ironically, people call it convenience food, but they call it convenience food because somehow we've managed to convince ourselves that stopping and eating is an inconvenience. And, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. If your sole motivator for eating or your sole motivator for making a choice is that you pick the thing that you can quickly pick up and pull the wrapper off of and just shove it in and get it down here, there's something about that which actually isn't right. It may be where you need to be in your life. It may be where you are right now, but there was a point in time where that wasn't the case, and there should be a point in the time in the future where actually that isn't the case. Because like I said, right now, where I am, if I haven't got time to eat anything, guess what? I just don't eat. And actually, that's the better choice, ironically.
Yes, well, that's what I was going to say, actually. Two things. It's one of my takeaways from France is that in general, and it is changing, and I did see a big change in the period where I was there for 17 years, and the changes in behaviour and what I saw on supermarket shelves, there was a significant change over that time, but they're still pretty set in their ways. And for the most part, they don't really do snacking.
No.
Yeah, when you have a builder come round to do the work, they won't even have very often, cups of tea and things. They have their meals and the things they consume at meal times. And when they do that, they stop and they take time. And it's usually a relaxed affair, a sociable affair, and something that takes time. They have this chunk of time in the middle of the day where they stop and have a proper meal. Yes, so it's sort of that aspect I was thinking of as you were talking there, but also what you just mentioned. And that's what's so great about eating the way we do. You don't need this constant fueling because you're going up and down on the sugar roller coaster. That if it's not convenient, if you haven't got time and your only option is that food on the go, which isn't great for you, yes, you always have that option of just not bothering.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you didn't have that option when you live on those processed and refined type foods. You don't really have that option because you can't just skip a meal without feeling awful.
No, exactly. And all that does, and that awful feeling incidentally, because when you then eat something, you get the dopamine release and you feel better. That awful feeling is the thing that reinforces that behavior. And it's that vicious cycle. That's the pitcher plant. That's the pitcher plant in full swing. And that's why people should never, ever, ever beat themselves up about it. Once you're in it, it's not impossible to get out, but you need, if you've got strong willpower, if you've got the ability to see it for what it really is for yourself, then yes, you can get out of it. I mean, I did it. But actually having the support of a group around you just makes it so much easier because you can validate your own experiences, and like I said, people just being able to say, yeah, I've done that. I've had that experience. I've lived that moment. And then all of a sudden it's kind of, oh, thank God someone else has, it's not just me. Why is it I can't walk past a Subway without going, that smells nice, okay? Because that's what it's designed to do, it's designed to draw you in. And why can't I resist going in? Well, because that's where the programming is. That's where you need some of this. You need some of this in your life. The marketing kind of steers you in. We could talk at length about marketing of food and how that's used to sort of, manipulate people's take on these things. But I think the key thing for me is the groups in whatever form they're in, whether it's the group that I'm involved with or another group, whether it's something being run by your local GP surgery. I've got to get a PHC plug in here somewhere. Okay. So I'm a PHC ambassador and there are PHC ambassadors all up and down the UK. You can go onto the PHC UK website and look them up and find them. That's the Public Health Collaboration. And so there are people like me running groups all over the country. The beauty of today and the modern technology is that the group doesn't have to be close to you. But if you prefer something where you're meeting people face to face, then that's there, that exists. You just need to know where to go to find it. And that's what the PHC are there to help with. It's all there. And again, the really funny thing is it's just about getting the message out there in terms of getting people to understand that these groups are there. And these groups are not there to make money out of people. They won't charge you. There are some, to be fair, there are some people who offer their services as mentors for people that want to sort of learn how they can build a keto diet that works for them. So your point about, the diet is different for everyone and we all do it differently, and I've heard some very good things about some of them. There's a lot of stuff on Google where they'll try and charge you 40 quid for a keto diet plan. You don't need that. You just don't need that. You can get that stuff elsewhere. But again, it's all about the support. It's not about the information. It's about the support and giving people the confidence to actually do it and try it. So, there are plenty of groups out there. Mine is just one of them. Hopefully what we've been doing has been making a difference to some people, but I know it has. And hopefully we will continue to make a difference for people as long as they need us. That's the key thing. And over time, hopefully it'll evolve and hopefully people will get to a point where, like I did with Aranda, and I said, well, look, I'll take it on. Hopefully over time, somebody will maybe spin out and start doing another one, and then we get more and more spreading out. And again, it's just another way of getting the message out there, right? It's just another way of getting the realization out to people that actually, you do have a choice. There are options, and some of the information that you are given and some of the information that's put in front of you is not optimal. And I'm being very polite when I say that. It's not optimal. It's not optimal for you. It's not personalized to you. Nobody has sat there and talked to you about what you want or why you're doing it or what would be best for you in your circumstances, And we're not there, as a group, we're not there to give people medical advice. We're not there to support them in that way. They have to do that kind of stuff themselves. And we've had people in the group, and we've got people in the group now who've got very complex medical conditions, and they are doing things with the full help and support of their various different practitioners. But what we are there to do is to give you the reassurance and the support that actually what you're doing does work.
Well, and it sounds like the natural progression from what you were saying, especially as you want to keep small groups, is that you'll just get satellites coming off it. But you did mention that you have a couple of spaces.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
If people are keen to come and join your family, how would they go about doing that?
The easiest way to get in contact with me is just to email me. So my email address is markdphc@outlook.com. I'm sure you'll put a link in the show notes, Daisy.
I will.
And if somebody's interested in finding out more, just drop me an email. We do have a Twitter account as well, Real Food UK, Real Food Your Way, UK. You can send us a message there, but the email is normally quicker. And just drop me a note, and I'll give you a call, and we can have a chat, find out, if what we're doing and the way we approach things would work for you. And if not, hopefully I can give you some pointers to maybe some other places that you can go and investigate.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing your time, lots of time with me today.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
You know how I like to finish, and you did promise me a top tip that was going to appeal to Dan in particular.
Yes, absolutely.
So Dan,
absolutely,
if you're listening,
yes.
This one is especially, as well as everyone else, but especially for you.
Okay. Firstly, I'd just like to say that I'm sure Dan is listening. Secondly, so this will make Dan smile, I'm sure. I have a top tip, which is to do with how to deal with those moments where you open the fridge.
Oh, I know what it is. It's eggs. It's eggs.
It is. You see, you've spoilt it now. You've spoilt it. Yeah. And it is. It's a very simple thing, okay, which is if you are in that space where you are opening the fridge and you're just looking for something to pick out, and this comes from my own personal experience, right? What I've done is I've just boiled 3 or 4 eggs, chucked them in a bowl, put them in the fridge. Put them right in the middle of your line of sight on that shelf in the middle of the fridge. So when you open the fridge door, the first thing you see is the bowl of hard-boiled eggs. What happens then is they become the easy choice. They're right in front of you. And all you've got to do, crack it, peel the shell off, takes 5 seconds, and you're there. Okay. And the thing about an egg is it's quite satisfying, and it's quite hard to eat all 4. 4 is an important number. Okay. So I found that actually, if I had a bowl with 3 in it, if I was that way inclined, I could probably manage 3, but I was never able to manage 4. Okay. And that's the habit. It's the I'm not going to eat it all habit. So yeah, if you are finding it hard, if you are finding that you are opening the fridge and looking for something to nibble on, put some boiled eggs in there. Use those as a way of just dealing with that craving, because they're not going to do you any harm. You probably won't be able to eat all 4. I'll probably get a whole bunch of messages now from people going, yeah, I can eat 4 eggs. That's fine. That's okay. That's fine.
That'd be the new viral challenge. What have you unleashed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, yeah, exactly. That is the question. But it does work. Okay. It does work. I've used it in the past to sort of like great success. A couple of other people in the group have used it. I believe it comes with the Dan Grief certificate of authenticity, insofar as he's been a participant in that practice. And it's also found its way, I believe, into some of the TLC groups as well as a tip for people. And yeah, it does work. And it really is probably my toppest tip of all, which is actually, if you know you're going to do it, put something in the way. Put something in the way. And it's the same psychology as if you know you have to have food in the house which you don't want to eat. If you know you have to have, I don't know, what's a bad thing? If you know you have to have chocolate biscuits in the house because you've got kids coming or your partner wants them or whatever, okay, just don't have them at the front of the cupboard, put them at the back. Make them hard. Just if there's something in the way and you don't catch them visually, or they're slightly harder to get to, okay, you've got that one little extra hurdle to get past.
Well, that's James Clear's friction, isn't it? Add friction.
It is, absolutely. Yeah. And that's all the hard-boiled eggs do is and what you do in this case is
remove friction.
You remove friction. So you add friction for the other choices by removing friction and putting the right choice in front of you. Okay. I've done something very similar with bacon.
It's always going to work. Yeah.
That works quite well as well. But the hard-boiled eggs are, because it's so easy to do, it's so simple to do. And you can put them in there, of course, and they last. They don't, they don't go off in a day. Well, if they do go off in a day, you're buying your eggs at the wrong place, to be honest with you. But and it works really well.
But it's setting those boundaries, isn't it? That's where it's getting to grips with the snack monster as well.
Yeah,
it's saying you can have something to eat, but this is what's available to you.
Yeah,
these hard-boiled eggs, and so if you're hungry, feel free. This is what's here and it's ready to go, but that's your only option.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's reverse psychology from the snack manufacturers, okay, because it's exactly the same approach. Right in front of you, immediately available. All you've got to do is pick it up and open the packaging.
It's funny, actually, when you mentioned earlier, it's something I meant to say about the convenience food culture. I mean, what's more quick and convenient than some scrambled eggs? I mean, you'd struggle. It's almost as quick as opening a packet. It's what makes me laugh when people say that, it's too much effort to do these things. Actually, depending what you're doing, no, they're quicker than heating up something in the microwave.
Yeah, it can be. It can be no more effort. It can be slightly less effort. I mean, the bottom line, the way I've always looked at those things, is it probably balances itself out in the end. Yeah, it might feel slight. And this is one of the interesting things, right? If you've got something in a packet, you have to take out of the packet, and maybe you have to put it into a jug, and maybe you have to add some water and mix it up or heat it up or put it in a microwave. In reality, is that any harder than scrambling some eggs? No. But there's something about how it's done and how it's packaged and how it's presented to people. They think it's easier. Probably isn't. If you were to do a traditional time and motion study on it, it's probably harder. But the messaging is about how easy, and that's the interesting thing, right? It's the messaging around how easy and convenience foods are.
Well, they're called convenience foods.
Exactly. The clue's in the name. The clue's in the name. Yeah, exactly.
The brainwashing is in the name.
Yeah. Don't buy any food that says it's convenient. Don't buy any food that says it's healthy.
Or keto.
There you go. Or indeed keto, yeah. That's that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, on that note, I will let you go. Thank you so much for talking to me today. It really has been a very great pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
I've enjoyed myself immensely, Daisy, and thank you very much for taking the time to listening to somebody else ramble on.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you. Thank you for staying with me right to the very end. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you are trying to remember some of the books we mentioned or some of the links, you can find them, of course, in this week's show notes. But it's that time now for this week's end quote. And yes, I'm back with James Clear. I think I've mentioned, and the reason I get plied with James Clear quotes all the time is because I've signed up to his newsletter, which is really good. It comes in the format of sending you a few of his quotes, and he also shares a couple of quotes from other people. And the third thing he does is ask you a question. This week, the question was, it was a really good one. So I thought I'd share that with you as well. So his question for you, as he puts it, is, if someone took control of your life tomorrow, what's the first thing they would change? See what I mean? It's a really good question, isn't it? That got me thinking and doing a bit more thinking. And then, of course, when you've answered it, what does that lead to? Maybe lead to some positive change. Who knows? So on now, and I have so many to choose from. So let's see, which am I going to choose this week? Oh, here we are. Here's a perfect one because it ties right back nicely into where I started with Crowded House and 4 Seasons in One Day. So here we go. This week's end quote, James Clear. Good advice at the wrong time is bad advice. Life is full of seasons, and each season has different requirements. Know what season you are in, and you can better identify which ideas to utilize. I hope wherever you are, you have more of the sunny weather this week started off with, and less of the snow, blizzardy, snaily weather that it ended with here. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Until I see you back here, same place, same time, next week, please take very, very good care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.